That's weird. All right. Well, anyway, here we go. All right. Hello and welcome to the Hoopheads podcast. It's Mike Cleansing here with my co-host Jason Sunkle tonight, and we are jumping on with the NBA season only days away to do our annual tiers of the NBA. And if you've listened to us in the past, you know that we have put together a series of tiers that have sort of become our stick for this particular little game that we play. So what we're going to do is we are going to put all of our NBA teams into 6 tiers. Jason, do you want me to share the tiers and then we'll just kind of go through them one by one?
Sure, sounds good. Go for it.
Okay. So tier
Did you,
number
wait,
one.
wait. Before you do this, Mike, did you adjust the last name now?
I did.
Okay,
It's
good.
no longer it's not capture the flag. I still think it should. Well, we'll talk about it when we get
We'll
there.
litigate. We'll litigate this. We'll
We'll
litigate
litigate
this.
it. We'll litigate it when we get there. So let's just quickly refresh everyone's memory as to what the tiers are, and then we'll go through and put our teams into the tiers and talk about each team and why they are where they are. And if we have disagreements or arguments, we will go back and forth in a discussion about said team and try to figure out why we have disagreements and how we see these different teams. So some teams we may end up spending a lot of time talking about, some teams we may spend very little time talking about, just depending on how this thing all breaks out. So all that being said, here are our tiers. The first tier, we can win it. These are teams that if Jason or I put a team into this tier, we believe that they can actually win the NBA championship. The second tier, we think we can win it. Now, this tier is a little bit different in terms of how it's set up because this is more of how the teams themselves are. There teams out there that Jason and I do not feel can actually win the title, but we think that they think that they can win the title. So that's the we think we can win it tiers. The next tier, playoffs. These are teams that we feel pretty confident are going to make the playoffs in this 2025-26 NBA season. Next tier, play-in. These are teams that should be battling for the 7 through 10 seeds in their respective conferences. Tier number 5, just plain bad. These are teams that are not overtly tanking, at least not as the season begins, but they are bad teams that have little to no hope of making the playoffs, let alone making the play in. So they are just plain bad. And then finally, the last category, last year was capture the flag. What was it the year before for Wemby? What did we have for Wemby? I can't remember what that was called.
Wobbly for Wemby or something like
I
that.
don't know. I can't remember what it was. So this year we have, I guess ostensibly there's 3 potential number 1 picks. There's AJ DeBansta from BYU. There's Darren Peterson from Kansas, who is, we believe, from Northeast Ohio. He was at Cuyahoga Valley Christian Academy for at least his freshman year, maybe his sophomore year. So he's a Northeast Ohio guy. And then we have Carlos Boozer's son as the other guy that potentially could be
Losing
a
for
number 1
boozing.
pick.
Losing for
Yeah, there
boozing.
you go.
That's a good one.
That's a new one. But I don't think we're going to go with that. We decided that we're going to go with Peter out for Peterson since he has some Northeast Ohio roots. It's been said that he is the best NBA prospect from Northeast Ohio since LeBron James. So we're going to go with Peter out for Peterson for our last
Who? LeBron who?
LeBron. Hennessy, man. Hennessy, baby. Hennessy. Forget the
Out 4 weeks.
yeah, with the sciatica. So we'll get to that when we talk. We'll get to that when we talk Lakers and figure out what category we're going to put them in. So, all right, let's begin. We can win it. Let's start with me asking you, how many teams do you have
5. 5.
You have 5. I have 4.
Okay, so
I'm assuming the 4 we have are going to be the same, and then I'll be curious to see who your one team is, and then the argument that
okay,
you
so
make
let's
for
just start.
said team.
OKC is 1. Agree?
OKC is yes,
Cavs are 1
yes,
or 2.
yes,
The Denver Nuggets.
yes,
And then I have the New York Knicks.
yes. I have the New York Knicks.
Okay, so those are the 4 I assumed. My 5th
Yes.
team.
Okay.
I did not get them in my pool. I did not pick them as the team that's going to win the most in the regular season. I'm putting the Minnesota Timberwolves in this category. I just have here's why, and you can do you have them in the we think they can win category?
Yes, and I look back at last year's tiers of the NBA, and I had the Minnesota Timberwolves in the we can win it. I had them as one of only 3 teams in my we can
And
win it
and
category last year. So,
and
I'm a believer in the Timberwolves.
here's why I think that they're in the we can win it category. I think Anthony Edwards continues to get better. I think Rudy Gobert, as much crap as we may give him as a basketball player, is still one of the best defenders in the NBA and can protect the rim. I think Julius Randle, we were unsure with what Julius Randle was going to be for the Minnesota Timberwolves and whether him and we thought, I think we both can argue that Karl Anthony Towns and Julius Randle, we did not think that they were going to make as big of an impact in a positive way as they did last season. Would you agree with that statement? You agree with that statement, right?
I would agree
So,
on both sides.
putting it in perspective, another year of this group together, another year of uh, Anthony Edwards getting better. I think Chris Finch is a great coach. The bottom line is this: I just think that this team is ready to make the jump. I think my biggest concern would be are they can they compete in a consistent basis with OKC in a 7-game series? That would be my hesitation. Is Oklahoma City? Do I think that this team could beat Denver? I think this team could beat Denver in a 7-game series. I
They've
am not
beaten Denver repeatedly. They've repeatedly
repeatedly.
beaten
Well,
Denver.
I guess I
Yeah.
should say I don't think I know they can beat Denver in a 7-game series, but my hesitation would be can they beat Oklahoma City? And I think to be honest with you, me putting Minnesota in this group is primarily because they've beaten Denver consistently. And if I'm putting Denver in this category, I feel like Minnesota also deserves to be in this category. So I'm putting Minnesota there.
Okay, so you make some compelling arguments. I think the argument for Minnesota is the continued ascension of Anthony Edwards. We've discussed that a lot over the last couple podcasts. He's clearly right there knocking on the door of being, if he's not a top 5 player in the league, he is right there. And if you have a top 5 player in the league, that usually gives you a chance to compete for an NBA title. So Edwards, check. Rudy Gobert as a one-man defensive wrecking crew, maybe not at the absolute peak of his powers at age 33, but still certainly if you're going to just plug a guy in the middle of your defense and say, hey, anchor what we're trying to do all over the floor and be the guy that's going to protect the rim, you're not getting much better than Rudy Gobert at doing that. And as you said, Julius Randle made a much more positive impact on their team, both in the regular season and then even more surprisingly, probably in the playoffs when they were able to continue to advance last year. And Randall played really, really well, especially when they beat the Lakers. He just had an outstanding playoff series and had a bigger impact than anybody I think thought that he would. This team's big. This team is menacing defensively. When I look at the why not in terms of thinking they can win the title, I look at the point guard position and I see probably starting again this year for them is 38-year-old Mike Conley. And I think if you could put Mike Conley in the way back time machine and put 32-year-old Mike Conley on this team, I think this team definitely could be a team that could win the NBA championship. I just don't know what their depth is at point guard. And the counter argument would be, well, hey, they're just going to give the ball to Ant. And I would say if I look at the total breadth of Anthony Edwards' skills, his ability as a playmaker is probably the one that is the furthest from being at a superstar level. And so I just don't know what they're going to do at that point guard position because Mike Conley is clearly not at this point in his career capable of playing high level point guard basketball for 30 to 35 minutes a night, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. And then you look at, well, who else do they have on the roster? Rob Dillingham out of Kentucky, their draft pick from last season, didn't play at all. And when he did, and the type of player that he is, he's not really a pure point guard anyway. He's more of a scorer. So that doesn't really fit. You got Bones Highland on this team who multiple teams have given up on Bones as far as being a guy that can provide steady play at the point guard position. And then after that, there's really nobody on the roster that's listed as a pure point guard. They have some other guards, but they don't have anybody that is really a guy that can run the show and be a floor general. And so that's the thing that I worry about is their superstar, Anthony Edwards, the one area where he is, and I don't want to say weak, but the one area that he probably needs to continue to improve more than anything to really reach his potential is that playmaking piece. And they don't really have anybody else on their roster that fills that role simply because Mike Conley just is old and can only do it at whatever level and not to the level that they need in order to be able to win a championship. So that's why I knocked them down this year to the next category. But I can see it. I understand why you did it, but I just don't think that with the point guard situation that they have currently on their roster that they can. I don't think they're better than Denver and Oklahoma City. I don't see them being able to beat both of those teams if those two finish 1-2 in the West, which is what I would expect.
What if they
Means
found a
try
way to get say Boston's a down season? What if they find a way to get Derek White on their team?
if you add Derek White to this team, it's a championship contending team for sure. Again, then you look at what do you have to give up, and I don't know what Minnesota's off the top of my head. I don't know what their draft pick situation is and what they could potentially give up, or who off the Timberwolves roster would Boston want to deal for, and how would that impact the roster. But if in a vacuum, if you take out a rotation player at a different position and you bring in Derek White and put him next to Anthony Edwards, then yeah, this team for sure becomes a legitimate title contender.
I
Let's
think the
just hit
rest
each one of the
the other.
let's
I
hit
mean,
let's hit let's hit each of those teams just very quickly. Just give me well, let's alternate. You pick two of the teams you want to share some thoughts with, and I'll
Oklahoma
share
City had
thoughts of the other.
68 wins last year. And they are the defending champions. Done.
And they're
Like
going to be
right.
better. They're young. They're young. They're young. They're going to be better. Their guys are going to get. Their players are all on an upward trajectory. So yeah, they're the overwhelming favorites to win the title. Pick your
Yep.
second
Okay.
team.
Um. I mean, I think I guess I'll go with the Cavs. I mean, they were the number one seed in the East last year, and they deserve and probably will be either the one or the two seed this year. I mean that and theoretically, if everybody's healthy, they are the best team in the East. If everybody's playing, they're the best team in the East. The question comes down to can they do it in the playoffs? The end.
So just one thing on the Cavs from me, and it goes back to what we've talked about forever when it comes to the Cavs. Does Evan Mobley have to be the best player on this team in order for them to win the championship? Can they win this? Can they win the title if Donovan Mitchell is still their best player and Evan Mobley is their second best player on offense? Can they win the title?
Probably not.
I would agree. I think it's going to be tough. I think Mobley has to take. He took a big leap last year, second team All NBA, Defensive Player of the Year. Probably showed us everything we could have ever wanted from him and more, considering where we were with him heading into last season, where we were kind of down and like, man, is this guy ever going to get to that level, or is he just going to be a really good defensive player who dunks lobs? And he showed himself to be much more than that. He's got to get to. I don't think he's going to get to Giannis's level, but that's the model for what he has to be is a lesser version of Giannis going to the rim and in terms of strength around the basket, but maybe an elevated version of Giannis as a shooter. And I think that is the level he has to get to. And if he gets to that level, then I think he's probably your best player because of what he does on both ends of the floor. It'll be interesting to see if he gets there. I still think if Mitchell is their best player, I think this roster is too flawed with the overlap between their four best guys. And so they're going to be right there and they're going to have a chance because I think either them or the Knicks is going to get to the finals. And if you get to the finals, anything can happen. But I still think Mobley has to ascend to be their best player before this team really can say, hey, we're going to win a title if everybody in if all the contenders at full strength, Mobley's going to have to be the best player if you're going to have any chance to beat any of these other teams at full strength. That's what I'll say about the Cavs. And then I guess the last team is, I'll guess I'll hit the Knicks and Nuggets. The Knicks, you have to put them as a team that can legitimately win it because I think they have a chance to get to the NBA Finals. But I still think that if Karl Anthony Towns, I stand by what I said last year when they made the trade. even though Towns was great. He way, way exceeded my expectations, both in the regular season and the playoffs. He was about as good as you could have honestly hoped to expect. I still think that when push comes to shove, there's just going to be some bad Carl Anthony Towns moments, whether it's defensively or boneheaded things he does on offense that are going to prevent you from winning a title. Maybe they get to the finals with them. And if you get to the finals, like I said with the Cavs, anything can happen, which is why I have them in this category. But I still think Carl Anthony Towns ultimately holds them back. And then Denver, you look at what they did upgrading their bench, right? You get Cam Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. Hopefully, Cam Johnson's healthier and he's a more versatile version of Michael Porter Jr. And then you add Tim Hardaway, you add Valanciunas to the bench. And I think by doing that, you just end up with a roster that is much, much stronger, much deeper. You're not depending anywhere near as much on Russell Westbrook as they did last year, right? You take Russell Westbrook out of the equation and you add in what they were able to pick up and do with their bench, getting Bruce Brown back from his to add him to what was their championship roster. I just think they're deeper, and Jokic makes everybody better. And last year they were just a guy or two short. And who knows if they get anything from Julian Strother or they get anything from Peyton Watson, bonus if either one of those two young guys becomes a guy that they can count on. So I think all four of these teams that we have that we agreed upon, I think you can make a compelling case for them getting to the NBA championship. I think Denver and Oklahoma City are the two best teams, but obviously one finals team has to come from the East. And again, barring catastrophic injury for either the Knicks or the Cavs, I just don't see how any other team makes it out of the Eastern Conference. Now, we didn't see Indiana coming last year. So is it possible that we're wrong? Sure. But I only see us being wrong if injuries somehow derail either the Knicks or the Cavs. So
All right. Next, we think we can win it. How many teams? Now, obviously, you have Minnesota in this list. How many teams
so
other than
I have three other teams besides the Timberwolves. So I have four teams total, including the Timberwolves.
I have 5 teams in this
Okay.
list, not including the
All right.
Timberwolves. So give me your. Let's see. You name your 3 teams or your 5 teams.
I have the Orlando Magic.
I have them.
Okay. I have the Los Angeles Lakers.
I have them.
I have the Houston Rockets.
I have them.
Okay. And then I have the Timberwolves.
Okay. I have included the Los Angeles Clippers on this list because I think they
Okay.
believe. I don't believe that they can win it.
Right.
I
I
will be clear
understand.
here.
That's this
I
cat.
believe that
This is
they
the
think
one
they
category that is not necessarily our beliefs, but what we believe the team believes.
and I think and I'm putting the Warriors in this category too. I think
It's
the
fair.
Warriors believe that they can win it with Steph, Draymond, Jimmy Butler, and their young-ish core that is productive. And I think they believe it. I don't think. Listen, I'm going to be clear. If I had to rank these teams, I'll rank the 5 teams that I have: Orlando, Warriors, Houston, Clippers, Lakers. What team do I think is the most likely to be in the finals? I'm going to go with Orlando purely on the fact that they are the only Eastern Conference team I have in this list, and all the other teams and above them, I have the Western Conference teams. I'm going to put Orlando as most likely out of this group. If I said, "What about my Western Conference teams? Which one is most likely?" I don't know. I'm going to say Houston probably, and then I'm probably going to say I'm crazily going to say the Lakers, even though I don't believe they have any chance whatsoever. Because I sure as heck am not putting my eggs in the basket of friggin' James Harden. We know how that would go. Okay, and the Warriors, I think you made the point in our win pool that they probably have high variance, right? They probably are a high variance team. So I think that's why I would put them at the lowest pedestal on this. I probably would put the Clippers above them, and I put the Warriors the lowest. But I think it's got to be, in my opinion, Orlando, Houston, the Lakers, Clippers, Warriors, and my 5. If I put this tier in order from most likely to least likely to be in the finals, despite the fact that they all think they can get there. That's my order.
All right. So my four teams are Orlando, the Lakers, the Rockets, and Wolves. So if I'm going to do the exercise that you just did, I would probably go Orlando, Minnesota, Houston, and then the Lakers as the least likely of the teams. And I would agree with you. If I had the Clippers in this category, I would put them in the zero chance of winning the NBA title, even though they might believe that they can. I don't know if the Clippers believe that they can or not. It's
Do they
with all the
believe
stuff
that
that's going
Kawhi
on
got
with the
paid under the under the?
yeah, there's things that they believe. I'm not sure that they believe they can win a title at this point, but who knows? Who knows? You may be right. So I think Orlando, the case for them obviously is that the Eastern Conference is weak. Franz and Paolo have been a good duo. We've yet to find out if Franz has fixed his 3-point shot, and he didn't have it fixed during the World Championships, so or Eurobasket. So more than likely, he's one tool shy of really making this team a legitimate title contender. Where if Franz was a knockdown 38% 3-point shooter, suddenly Orlando becomes a lot more interesting. Obviously, they pick up Bane. If it's healthy, the Bane, Jalen Suggs backcourt is intriguing to me in the same way that Franz and Paolo are a great duo in the front court. I think Suggs and Bane could be a similar deal in the backcourt. This team's big and they're pretty deep and they've proven to be a great defense. It's a matter of what can they do offensively, and I think Bane fills a lot of holes for them. So if the Knicks were to falter or get an injury, I don't think it's out of the realm of the possibility that Orlando could make a run to the finals. And then I look at the other teams in there, the Lakers. You can understand why they think they could win the title, right? You have Luka, who's arguably one of the three best players in the league. You have LeBron, who's arguably the second best player in the history of the league. And you put those two together, it's a pretty good nucleus. It's a pretty good formula for what has won titles in the past. Even no matter what you think of LeBron at this point in his career, last year he was third team All NBA, so still one of the top 15 guys in the league. So even if he drops a little bit, let's put him in the top 20. You've got a top three player and a top 20 player as the two best guys on your roster. That's usually a pretty good combination for having an opportunity to make a deep run in the playoffs. I just don't think the rest of the roster is deep enough. It's flawed. There's guys that are one dimensional or mostly offensive players like Austin Reeves, and you have guys like Marcus Smart who maybe defensively has slipped, but isn't a very good offensive player. Hasn't played at all yet in the preseason. I just think that the Lakers roster around Luka and LeBron is flawed, and so I don't really think they can win it. But I understand why they think they could. And then the Rockets, we talked about them a little bit earlier. Just the variance with the Rockets and Durant's health. I think he fits exactly what they needed, but there's been some weird sort of chemistry, team motivation things that have gone on with Durant in the last few years. And then obviously the Van Vliet injury. I think it has a negative impact on him, especially early in the season. Maybe if Reed Shepard is able to fill those shoes, or they just give the ball to Ahmed Thompson and he's able to become their pseudo point forward, Scottie Pippen type of player, that maybe Van Vliet's injury doesn't matter. But I do think that without him, they're weaker. And whether that's because Fred Van Vliet could have played 25 or 30 competent minutes at point guard and they're just going to miss that. I think maybe the upside is higher for the Shepard Thompson duo. But in the playoffs, it's nice to have a guy that's played in so many big games and played well, play 25 or 30 minutes for you at the point guard spot. And that's exactly what Van Vliet has done. So I probably would have thought the Rockets could have won it. I would have given them a small chance with Van Vliet. Without him, I don't think that that's a realistic possibility with the teams that are ahead of them in the West. And then I've already talked about the Warriors, who I didn't have on my list, but you did. Maybe they think they can win it, but I just think they're too old. The injuries are going to catch up with them either in the regular season, or for them to go through a playoff grind of 2 months, 7-game series at their age. I just, I don't see it. I think Steph's last hurrah was in 22 with the Warriors. And if he's ever going to get back to the NBA finals, he's going to have to do it in a different city, which I don't see happening. So I think we've seen the last of Stephen Curry in the NBA finals, unfortunately. So
Okay. All right, the playoffs. How many teams do you have in the playoffs bracket?
I have 6.
Okay, well, so I think obviously I've already named 5. I've already named 7 Western Conference teams between my we can win it, we think we can win it categories. I only have 4 in the playoffs bracket. So why don't you go ahead and
Okay.
name your teams, and then
Okay.
obviously if they're ones that we've already addressed, we can go
Okay.
ahead.
All right. So I have the Bucks.
Okay, I do as well.
All right. Putting you down for the Bucks. I have the Hawks.
I do not have the Hawks.
Okay. I have the Pistons.
Okay.
Do you have the Pistons?
Yes, I do.
Okay. I have the Clippers, who we already talked about in this category. I think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't think they'll do anything in the playoffs, but I do think they'll make the playoffs. Then I have the Warriors, who we've already talked about, and I have the Mavs.
The Mavs. My Eastern Conference team that you do not have in the playoffs. I've swapped out the Hawks for the Boston Celtics.
Okay.
I just can't
Fine.
get I can't wrap my head around a team who's been as consistently as good as Boston. I know they don't have Jason Tatum. I know you alluded to on our last podcast about the video of him dunking, and if he comes back and he plays, this team is not going to be in the play-in. All right, it's not happening. This team is going to be in the they're going to be in the top 6. If he
Their
plays,
roster is bad. Their roster is bad, though. Their roster is bad. We went over their center rotation a couple podcasts ago, but their depth is bad. And I think it depends on when or if Tatum comes back. I think that there's a chance that Boston could be in a fairly decent hole by the time he comes back if things don't go smoothly, which I don't know how smoothly they're going to go. But I get your point. Here's the thing on the Eastern Conference, right? In the Eastern Conference, I think there's 5 playoff teams. When I went through this exercise, I had no idea what to do with the 6th spot in the Eastern Conference. So you have Knicks, Cavs, Bucks, Hawks,
well,
and Pistons. I think as the
let's just say I
5.
have more teams in the play-in than are possible for the play-in.
Right.
For the
I
because of the
agree.
Eastern Conference. Because of the Eastern
I
Conference.
do
I
as
have
I do as well. I
okay.
just don't think I could not figure out for the life of me who the 6th Eastern Conference playoff team was. I couldn't. So you landed on the Celtics, obviously. I have the Celtics in the next category, which we'll talk about, along with 1, 2, 3, 4. I have four teams in the Eastern Conference in my play-in category. We'll get to that.
That's
So let's
exactly how
let's
many.
talk.
That's how many you should have in the playing category. I have 6, Mike, because I couldn't make a decision.
Well, I have a lot of my teams that are just plain bad in the Eastern Conference. I'm gonna have to move somebody up to get because I only have 5 teams in my we think we can win it playoffs category. So I don't even have a sixth. I don't even have a 6th
No,
Eastern
you have
Conference
5. You have
team.
6. You have Orlando, Cavs, the Knicks, Milwaukee, the Pistons,
Oh, you're
and
right. I do. Yeah, you're right. I forgot Orlando.
man,
Okay,
he's
so I
retired and
do.
he's
You're right.
forgotten how to count. My gosh.
Sorry, I can't count. I can't count. So I do have 6. All right, so that makes sense.
All right.
So
As
you
far
don't
as
have
the
it. You said you don't have Atlanta, right? Atlanta's the team you're bumping out.
they're in the play-in, baby.
Okay. All right. So we want to talk about Atlanta first.
I mean, I can't buy into Trey Young anymore. I'm over it. I'm done. I'm done buying into that guy. He had one good he had one good playoff series and one good playing
I
game.
think the rest of I think the rest of their roster though, I think the rest of their roster is good enough that in
Kristaps,
the
you're
in the
relying on his
terrible
health.
in the terrible Eastern Conference though, I think I just think this team they have guys that I think they can be good. I mean, I think they can be good defensively despite the fact that you have Trey Young in your lineup. Jalen Johnson, good player, does a lot on the
Is he
floor,
going to be healthy all year?
versatile. Coming back from a torn ACL, which again, always a concern, but
And he
certainly
was
not
hurt
the
in
same
college
level of
too, right?
concern.
Jalen Johnson was hurt in college
Yeah,
too. So
he was. He was, but certainly not the same level of coming back from a torn ACL of even 10 years ago. The rate of success of coming back pretty much 100% healthy from a torn ACL is pretty high at this point. Dyson Daniels, great defensive player, improved as an offensive player, probably has a continued upward trajectory. Risha Shea was the number 1 pick in the draft. Is he a prototypical number one pick who's going to be a perennial all-star? Probably not, but he's going to be a good player in the league for a long time, and he has a lot of skills that are valuable. Porzingis, he's not going to probably be healthy, but the best version of Porzingis makes any team better just because of what he can do at his size, spreading the floor and blocking shots. Okongwu, I've heard multiple podcasts. I think Zach Lowe picked him to be the sixth man of the year, but he's a guy who's continued to get better. Again, a little bit offensively challenged, but a force on the defensive side of the floor and improving as an offensive player. They got Alexander Walker. They got Luke Kennard. I just think this roster is good enough that, and Trae Young is good enough at what he does offensively. And I think this lineup is good enough to be able to hide him defensively that I think Atlanta's going to be better. I think
Yeah.
Atlanta's going to be better than you think. And I just think in the weak Eastern Conference that they got a good shot to be I think they're going to be the fourth or fifth. I think they're going to finish
Listen,
fourth or fifth in the East.
you make a lot of good points. I'm just not buying any. I'm not buying what you're selling just
Fine.
because I don't believe in
I
Trae Young.
understand. I understand. I understand your Trae Young skepticism. I completely understand. It's well justified based on just where the Atlanta's finished in years when he's been healthy and other guys have not. He hasn't been able to lift this team beyond sort of mediocrity, except for one year where there was kind of some fluky weird stuff that went on in the playoffs when they made that run. So all right,
So
let's move
then,
on from Atlanta.
as far as the other two teams in the Eastern Conference, Milwaukee and the Pistons, we're in agreement. I think Milwaukee's probably the fourth best team in the East. I think they're the you know, and I think it's Milwaukee's four, Pistons are five, and then Boston, Atlanta is 6, 7. And I wasn't trying to do the 6, 7 thing. I was just saying that's where they go. So, um, that's where I'm at. And I don't know. Do you think Milwaukee or Pistons end better, Mike?
It's a tough one. It really is. I think. I mean, part of me doesn't want to bet against Milwaukee. I mean, clearly Giannis is probably the best player in this conference. So to say that he's going to finish outside of the top 4 or 5 and he's going to finish sixth or finish in the play-in seems crazy. Yet at the same time, I think Detroit has a better team than the Bucks. If I look at just the total package of the roster, I like the Pistons better. I like the Pistons roster better than I like Milwaukee's. But you're probably right in that Giannis is that good. I could see Milwaukee finishing fourth. I could also see him finishing behind Atlanta and Detroit if both of those two teams come together the way that potentially they could. I still feel like Atlanta to me is completely unproven. Detroit, I think, proved a little something in the playoffs last year, going toe to toe with the Knicks in the first round. And obviously, they're going to get Jaden Ivey back, who had a good start to the previous season before he got hurt and missed the rest of the year. So I think Detroit is more of a proven concept than Atlanta. And Milwaukee, you're just basically betting on Giannis to be able to carry whatever else the Bucks are going to throw out on the floor. Because other than Giannis, clearly the Bucks roster is inferior to both Atlanta and Detroit's. The question is, can Giannis elevate those guys and make them into the fourth best team? I don't know. I'd probably pick either Atlanta or Detroit, one of the two, to finish fourth, and then pick Milwaukee in the fifth spot and figure that the other team, Atlanta or Detroit, maybe it didn't work out perfectly and that team finishes sixth. But I don't know. I don't see any of those other teams. You're higher on the Celtics than I am, so I don't think the Celtics are going to creep into the top six. So I don't know. I could see. Let's put it this way. I still wouldn't want to see. We talked about it. I think about this last year when we were talking about the Cavs playoff matchup in the second round and saying, we really didn't want to see Giannis and maybe we'd rather see Indiana. And that turned out to be a false hope. But still, the idea of playing Giannis in a playoff series would scare me to death just because of how relentless and just, again, how hard he plays and how hard he competes. I'd be scared of that. And that's not going to go away in the regular season. So I can see you making the case for the Bucks being fourth. I just don't like the rest of their roster as much as I like Atlanta's and Detroit's. So it depends on how you value Giannis.
Okay. All right. Next up, playing.
Quick hit on the Mavs before we. What's your Mavs take? Because I kind of shared mine in the last podcast about the
I
tiers
think the
and the fact
Mavs.
that
I think the Mavs, if Anthony Davis, Cooper Flag, and company stay healthy, and Kyrie maybe comes back, I know they've said that he's not as progressing as much as they thought he would, even though he said he's making progress. I think this team's good. I think they're as long, but it's all going to hinge on Anthony Davis's health, which that's like that's like betting on Zion Williamson's health, and Joel Embiid's health, and I think that's the biggest question mark. How many games until Davis gets poked in the eye and has to miss 3 games because of getting poked in the eye or something ridiculous? I don't know. I think that's
You're
the
right.
biggest
It's
thing.
it's
The
Davis
biggest
Davis's
question is
health.
Anthony Davis. So
Give me Cooper's flags. What's Cooper Flag's stat line? End of the season, points, rebounds, and assists. Where's he end up?
mm, 20. I'm basing it on the fact that I don't think Kyrie comes back very soon, so he's going to have to do some more scoring.
Okay.
So I'm going to say
All right.
20. I'm going to say 28-6.
Holy cow. If he goes 28-6. So I had 16, 7, and 4. You're really
28-6.
optimistic. If he's 28-6, I mean, that's legit. That is give him the ball and get out of the way in another 2 or 3 years, and he's that kind of superstar. It'll be fun to see if he gets to that level. I'm tempering my expectations a little bit, but he's going to be good right out of the gate, and
Don't
I
tweet
think
that
he
freezing
again is a
cold
guy who's
take.
going to
Don't
impact.
don't tweet that freezing cold takes when he's averaging 10, 4, and 2. Podcast listener. Okay. Anyways, all right.
Well,
Playing.
yeah. All right.
Playing. Okay. So
Yep.
here's who I have in the playing. I'm gonna just go Eastern Conference playing. These are the teams that
Okay.
are in vying for Eastern Conference playing in my eyes.
Okay. Go.
I've got the Hawks. I've got
Yep.
Chicago. I've got the
Yep.
Heat. I've got the
Yep.
Raptors. I've got the
Okay.
76ers if they stay healthy. I put a little
All
asterisk
right.
above that. And then I've got
All right.
Indy. And I went with Indy
Okay.
wins. And I understand that sounds ridiculous that I have them in here and I picked Indy's wins as high as I did. But that's where I'm at. That's who I have in the Eastern Conference. And then in the Western Conference,
Okay.
I have Portland,
Yep.
which you picked the losses. I have the
Yep.
Spurs. I
Yep.
have the Grizzlies.
Okay.
And I have Sacramento.
Okay. All right. So teams that I only have one team in here that we already talked about, and that's the Boston Celtics. So I have them in the play-in. So on the eastern side in the play-in, I have 4 teams. I have the Celtics, I have the Heat, I have the Pacers, and I have the Raptors. You pick one of those 3 teams that are not the Celtics to talk about.
I mean, I'll talk about the Heat. It's just the Heat culture, Mike. I mean, it's just the bottom line, right? Like they consistently win. Spo's a good coach. They're always around the 39 to 42, 43 wins every single season consistently. And ironically, Mike, Chicago is also in that same boat. Toiled away in mediocrity in winning 30. You don't know they've won 39 games the last 3 seasons, the Chicago Bulls, Mike.
I believe it. Yeah.
And they've been in the play in all 3 of those seasons. So that's why I had them in there as well. So I don't know. I think they're play-ins. I've already talked about the Hawks. Yeah, that's where I'm at. Indy, I'm higher
All
on
right.
than I just don't think that they're high enough. I'm higher on Indy than most people, but I don't think they're gonna end up being in the top 6.
Got it. Makes sense. So I had the Pacers in this spot. I think that you have to give some credence to the fact that they made it all the way to the finals and that a lot of those guys are going to be on the floor for them. And even though they're missing 2 very, very important ingredients in Halliburton and Miles Turner, I still think that the rest of the roster, you make an NBA Finals run, and that has to toughen you up and give you some confidence. And guys who maybe didn't have as big of a role in that title run are going to have to step up and play an even bigger role. So you think about Nemhart, you think about Benedict Mather, and you think about Isaiah Jackson coming back from injury, who they signed in the offseason to maybe take some of those Miles Turner minutes. Maybe you play small with Siakam playing some small ball 5, who knows? But I think Indy is a team that is going to be significantly worse. They obviously have no chance of duplicating their finals run, but I think that the championship equity that they earned last year probably is enough to get them into the plan. I don't think the roster as it's constituted is good enough to get them into the top 6. The Heat, I think, to me, it comes down to the reason why I put the Heat above some of these other teams that I categorized as just plain bad is because of Spoelstra and what he'll be able to do with whatever lineup he throws out there on the floor. He's going to work some magic and get his team to the point of competency. And I think in the Eastern Conference, competency is going to be enough to get you into the play-in. They're obviously going to struggle a little bit without Tyler Hero at the beginning of the season, but eventually he's going to come back. They got Norman Powell to kind of fill that scoring void. It just feels like Miami's always tough to play against because they're well coached. And then Toronto, we talked about it a little bit in the last pod during the wins draft about just it's a weird roster. I'm not sure how Brandon Ingram and RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickly, how do those 3 guys, how do they fit together? Scotty Barnes is probably the most important guy in the franchise, and yet all those other guys need the ball. And then obviously they signed Pirtle or re-signed Pirtle to an extension in the offseason that a lot of people wondered about, like, why are you giving him as much money as they did? So they're kind of a roster that I like their individual guys. I don't mind any of those 4 of their main guys, but I just don't know how they all fit together. They all feel like guys that are at their best when they have the ball in their hands, and there's not a lot of off-ball juice with any of them. And so that makes me wonder, even though you have a decent roster in terms of talent, I don't know how it fits. So that's why I have them here in the play-in. So that's the Eastern Conference for me. And then on the Western side, you and I agreed on the Spurs. I think that clearly if Wemby's healthy, this is probably where they're at because I don't think they're good enough to get to a 6 seed, but I do think that they're better than the teams that are behind them. Memphis, I put in here because, again, when John, Jaren Jackson have played and been healthy, they've won. Last year, they won 48 games and had kind of a really weird year. And I don't expect them to be at that level again. But if you win in the mid 40s, you probably have a chance to be in the play-in. And then my other Western Conference team was I continue to ride the Zion Pelicans train. So I had the Pelicans in the play-in mix here for the Western Conference simply because I refuse to give up my Zion stock. I just feel
Well,
like if the guy's healthy,
yeah. Listen,
if he's
if he's
healthy,
healthy, he's
if
healthy,
he's
but he's
healthy,
not going to
if
be.
yeah, right, he's probably not going to be. But I'm going to continue to ride the Zion train, and I'm continue as long as he's in the league. I'm going to continue to root for him because he's just such a unique talent, as I've said ad nauseum, literally hundreds of times on this podcast. So that's why I have him in there, and then I have a couple of teams that you had in the play-in. I have the Bulls and the Sixers in the just plain bad category, and I had the same for for Sacramento and the Blazers. So I don't know if you want to talk about either of those Western Conference teams. I mean, the Sixers is kind of self-evident. No matter whether you think they're going to be in the play-in or that they're just plain bad. I mean, it's just you can't count on their guys. But pick the Blazers or Sacramento and give me your thoughts
Can
on
I
why
just
you have
ask
them.
you one question about Zion Williamson?
Sure. Yeah.
Who has played more games in their NBA career? Zion Williamson or Markelle Fultz?
Who's played more games? It has to be Zion.
Zion Williamson has played 214 regular season games. Markelle
Okay.
Fultz has played 255.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy. And Markelle Fultz's career is ostensibly over, I would guess, at this point, because unless he's been signed recently in the last couple of days, I don't think he's currently on an NBA roster. And well, I'm looking forward to. Hey, listen, I'm hoping that I'm going to collect my Zion bet win this year. Right? He's only got to get to 250, so
Yep, but
that's like
listen.
another what? He's got to play. He's got to play 35 games or so to be able to get me to. Come on, Zion, take it home. 35 games. That's all I need.
Yep, there you go. Okay, I saw that stat, and I wanted to share it with you
Crazy.
when you said that. Okay,
That's crazy. That's crazy.
I don't really have anything to say about the Spurs or the Grizzlies. I just I don't know. Let's move on to the just plain bad. All right, just plain bad. The teams that I have in the just plain bad: Sacramento. Or not Sacramento. Sorry, I don't have
No, I
Sacramento.
thought you had Sacramento in the
Yeah,
in the
I said that.
play-in,
I mean
man.
that was a mistake. I have the Pelicans. because I don't believe in Zion being healthy.
Yeah.
I have
All
the
right.
Phoenix Suns, and I have
Okay.
the Charlotte Hornets. That's it.
All right. So I had again. I have the Suns and Hornets in this category, so we agree there. You had already mentioned the Bulls. I have them in this category. You had already mentioned the Sixers. I have them in this category. You had the Kings already. I have them in this category. You had the Blazers already. I had them in this category. So we have some teams that you had them battling in the play-in, and I have them as just plain bad. I don't know. Pick a team. Pick a team. Pick it. Well, we already talked the Pelicans. Go ahead.
And 76ers are totally hinged on whether the guys are healthy or not. Because I think you would agree that if they're healthy and they can play basketball, they're going to be in the playing conversation, right? But we don't have
Yeah,
faith
I would
that they.
agree. Yeah,
Okay, and I think,
correct.
and
Correct.
I honestly think, who else did you say? Did you say Portland? Do you have Portland in this category?
Portland. I have Portland in the just plain bad.
I think they could be good. They were good last. They surprised everyone last year. And maybe they're going to regress, but I think they're going to compete for a play-in spot.
I only have them. I only have them in this category because of the Western Conference and the depth. I think that their odds of making the play. They're probably again. If I look at this, I think they're better than the Suns. They're better than the Jazz. They are better, I think, than probably the Kings. Could they be better than the Pelicans if Zion's healthy? Probably. And that puts them at probably the 11 spot right outside the play-in. And then the teams that are above them, at least in my book, I'm talking about the Spurs and the Grizzlies and the Pelicans, all of which again are teams that just like any NBA team, but clearly those teams have real injury risk. When you talk about San Antonio, whose superstar player missed the second half of the season and who can never stay healthy, and the Grizzlies, whose two best players currently are not practicing. So there's clearly injury risk with those teams. I, I don't know. I don't think Portland's good enough in the Western Conference. If they were in the East, I would probably move them out of the just plain bad and into the play-in. But in the West, I can't justify it, especially with Scoot being out early. To me, I think that really hurts them because, again, ultimately they want to be able to build around Scoot as a leader and as a playmaker. And the fact that he's missing training camp, and then you got to try to incorporate him and get him back in shape as the season is going along, that's difficult. I think Portland also kind of, to me, they feel a little bit like the Raptors in that I like some of their guys. Like I like Avdia. I don't even mind Jeremy Grant. His contract that looked really big before doesn't look quite as bad. I like Drew Holiday, obviously, who they added. Shaden Sharp has some potential. They got Thibault. They got Time Lord if he could ever stay healthy and stay on the floor. Jan Hansen has been putting up summer league highlights. So they have some pieces. Klingon was good last year. They have pieces. I just don't know how all those pieces fit together. When I look at Portland, I'm just not sure like what's their identity? How are they going to play? And because I think they want to build their team around Scoot still, and I don't think they've given up complete hope that he can become the player that they thought he was when they were drafting him. And so I just don't know if this roster makes sense. That's why I have him in this category.
Okay, all fair points. All right, any other teams we need to talk about in that category, or we move on to the last one?
Uh, Not really. I think Sacramento is going to be bad. I just don't. We talked about the Murray injury, and without him at the beginning of the season, that's going to really that puts some strain on the Kings roster, and it's crazy when you think about the fact that this team had De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton 3 years ago, and now they have next to nothing. You're basically building around the old Chicago Bulls of DeRozan and Zach LaVine, who are both individually. I don't mind those guys if they were in different situations, but in Sacramento together, eh, I, I think that's why they're just plain bad. So I think we have the same three teams in the last category. Do you have three?
Washington, Utah, and Brooklyn. They're terrible. They're
Those are the three,
terrible.
right?
Those are the three.
Yeah,
And I think we could flip a
yeah,
coin as to
absolutely.
who's the worst. Like and like I said, the reason I went with Utah in our pools draft the other day was because I just felt that Utah's in the Western Conference and Brooklyn and Washington could win some stupid game in the Eastern Conference against teams that are they're not better than, but they don't like. Could Washington and Brooklyn beat Charlotte? Yes. They're gonna have to one. They're gonna have one. They play each other. They're gonna have to win games. Like it's gonna have to happen. Like I don't feel confident in Utah beating most, if any, Western Conference teams. I think their most of their wins will come against Eastern Conference teams. So that was where I was. Do I think Utah is a worse team than the other two? Probably not. But their level of competition is going to be much higher. So
All right. So let's frame the discussion in this particular way. If you were going to take one of these three teams, which one of these franchises, put these teams in order, not in terms of which team is going to be best, have the best record this year or the worst record this year, but in terms of if you were picking one of these teams to just take over that franchise and say, I'm going to be the New Jersey or the Brooklyn Nets for the next 5 years. I'm going to be the
I would pick
Wizards for the
Utah.
next 5 years,
Pick Utah
or I'm going to be the,
because of the draft capital they have,
I think
right?
you're
Don't
right.
they?
Tell me
They,
why.
they the draft
Yeah.
capital. The draft capital is
Yeah.
all the trades that Ainge has made to like build a war chest. It's not the OKC war chest because they haven't been as productive at getting better in the current moment. They've set themselves up for the future. Whereas when OKC made the trades, they got Shea. Okay, they they made other moves and then picked based on those moves, and then with Chet and Jalen Williams and all the other players, I think Utah is long term setting itself up. It's got a lot of picks and things that it's laid out for itself, but unlike OKC where it hasn't gotten better in the current times, right? So it's the OKC situation without getting better in the now.
I agree. I think Utah is the team that you most want to be. And I think there's reasons for that. One, you mentioned just the draft picks that they have coming from the Minnesota Timberwolves and from the Cleveland Cavaliers, both who have been good teams. So they're not necessarily high picks, but still picks that you can either use yourself or use them for trades. They have what I would say is the most intriguing young player, I think, on any of these three teams to me is Ace Bailey, just because of his pedigree coming out of high school and what he's flashed so far in the preseason. Obviously, he's never played a regular season game in the NBA, so it's hard to project him ahead of some of these guys that have played, maybe Alex Sarr or Bub Carrington, or I don't know, who do you like on the Nets? There's probably nobody that even I would even think would compare to him in terms of being a prospect. And then the other piece that Utah still has is Markkanen, who's clearly the best player on any one of these three teams. And whether that means that they keep him and use him as a building block, or eventually they trade him and he brings back other young pieces that you can put together with what you already have. I just think Utah has the most interesting young player. They have the best player of these three teams. And they also have some other young guys that I think potentially could become solid rotation players on a good NBA team. Keontae George is a decent player. Taylor Hendricks, who had that horrific leg injury last year after a couple games, but he was really coming on. And so can he come back and be healthy? I think he's a guy that could potentially be someone that could be an NBA rotation player and be a good one. Walker Kessler is an NBA rotation player. And I just think that their roster is the best of these three teams. But clearly they're the three that are they're gonna be tanking. And they're gonna be trying to get to the bottom of the league, to get to the top of the draft to see if they can get again, we're calling it Peter out for Peterson. So Darren Peterson, AJ DeBansta, or I forget Boozer's kid's name, um, but
Losing for
Carlos
boozing.
Boozer's son. So
Losing for boozing.
there we go. So so those are our tiers. Those are our teams. that's all a preview of what we think the season is going to look like. Next week on our regular Tuesday episode, we will talk a little bit about our final predictions for who we think is going to get to the finals, who's going to win the finals, MVP, some other awards, that kind of stuff to just kind of kick things off. And it'll be
Mike,
on opening night. So we'll have
we'll have some games to
what?
talk about. We'll have some games to talk about a little bit.
Correct, which I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I'm looking forward to be able to talk some not just off-season shenanigans and predictions, but actually be able to talk about some real basketball games. So that will be a fun one to look forward to. And again, I can't believe the NBA season is almost here, and it is. So we will be back with our, I guess, continuing our season preview, but also talking about the opening night on of the NBA season next Tuesday night slash Wednesday morning, which is when you'll be listening to it more than likely. So thanks for checking out this. We popped in this extra episode this week because we wanted to get in all of our preview content. So we appreciate you listening with us and going through and talking tiers of the NBA. So to everyone out there who's listening tonight, thank you. And we will catch you on our next episode. Thanks.